Good morning, everybody. We're just going to put the slides up really quickly. Give us 1 minute. Thank you.
Amy, I thought you were starting with the slides. I'm not sure. Nikhil or Amy,
Nikhil,
who started?
Nikhil. I think we're 1 moment putting them up.
Yeah, sorry. Give me a second.
Thanks, everyone, for your patience. Okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Amy Rivera. I'm the Director of Communications for Nonprofit Westchester. We are all here for AI implementation, risks, precautions. Oh, hold on. Did it go away? Seems like we're having some technical difficulties. I'm going to go ahead and share. Oh, there we go. We can see your screen, Nikhil, I think. Okay. So we're here for AI implementation, risks, precautions, and protections. We're really happy to have Nikhil Jagga back from our first ever program that we had, introduction to AI programs. And this will be the last and final AI program of the AI series that we had. So we're so happy to have Nikhil Jagga back, president of CMIT Solutions. Next slide, please. For those of you who don't know, Nonprofit Westchester, our mission is to strengthen Westchester's nonprofit organizations as they transform lives, empower communities, and drive positive change. We're a nonprofit organization, a membership association with about 300 plus members. Next slide, please. And we're really only as strong as our membership. So for those of you who are on the call who have not joined or are thinking about joining, please reach out to us, and you can also join on our website. Next slide, please. I want to thank our series sponsors, the entire AI series sponsors, which was Westchester County Board of Legislators, Brown & Brown Insurance, CMIT Solutions of White Plains, and Mercer. Next slide. And of course, I want to just thank all of NPW sponsors for a second here. We're really grateful for them. Makes this program happen. So thank you so much. And I will hand it over to Nikhil.
Thank you, Amy. Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. So in a second, we're going to put up a Mentimeter to capture your answers. But, this is really, like Amy said, the last in the series. So we went through in April and May and June, introducing AI, talking about AI adoption. So the real question is, what's holding you back if you haven't tried AI already? Or if you have tried it, what's holding you back from taking it a step further, and what are you most worried about?
Yeah, maybe unshare your screen and then Elijah will pull up the Mentimeter.
Awesome. So you guys should be able to scan the QR code with your phone and it'll directly take you to this question to put a response in. Or you can join from any browser, go to menti.com and enter in this code at the top. And we should be able to see your responses.
And feel free to type in the box whatever comes to mind so we can really see how everyone's feeling about using AI.
I like that. Feels like we're cheating.
That's a lot of great responses. I do feel that feels like we're cheating one is my favorite so far.
Yeah.
A lot of people are scared about security, privacy. An AI policy for nonprofits is mentioned. Accountability and oversight. And not being familiar. And then there's a few of you that are using it already. So I think that answers a lot of questions and sort of sets the stage for the presentation.
Yeah, I think, if you're worried about security, privacy, data security, you're definitely in the right place. And, the objective really today is to lay out clearly as much as possible, what's an acceptable use of AI, what data can you put, can you not put, within the different tools. Uh, if you haven't used AI or played around with it, I think we still have recordings of some of the earlier sessions that might walk you through, how to use it or what are the different use cases. So the focus today would be more about just the risks and ways to mitigate those risks. So I'm going to start sharing my screen again.
Great. I could send the previous recordings in the follow-up for this session, so you all have that.
Yep.
And if any of you want to access it, it's all on our YouTube channel as well.
You can put that in the chat. That's great.
So yeah, so like I said, the agenda for today is really, we're going to walk through the types of generative AI risks that are most common and most commonly that prevents people from using the tool, and the 5 ways of mitigating the risk, the 5 most common ways. And really, just like when we sit in a car and we wear a seatbelt while driving, this is about the same concept of we want to use AI responsibly. We don't want to deter people. So hopefully after this presentation, people are not deterred from using generative AI. But just like when you wear a seatbelt, you're more conscious of the guardrails around when you are using it. What to be careful of. A couple of disclaimers. These are general guidelines. They apply to mostly all AI tools that are public, like ChatGPT, Copilot, Grammarly, if you're using it. If you are building your own AI tools, or if you have the enterprise version of some of these tools, these risks are lower in some case. But what we're discussing generally applies. And then, some of the things I'm going to talk about is also bleeds into the legal realm. So if you have a specific question that's very specific to your situation, it's always good to consult with a legal resource. And I'm sure NPW has legal resources that they can point you to as well. And before I begin into the meat of the presentation, I quickly want to acknowledge two people who've helped me, think through risks and been good resources for me. One is Kathy DiAgostino. She's the AI training coach. And the second is Amy Goldsmith. She's a AI lawyer, and AI is fast changing, and it's always good to have a team of resources to keep up to speed. So the types of risks, so whether you're creating content or you're consuming content with AI, there are, generally speaking, 6 types of risks that people come across the most. So one is accuracy, and what you'll also hear called hallucination. So AI is, fully capable of fabricating information, and we're going to walk through some examples of each of these. So, I'm going to show you how that happens. Privacy, obviously, that was a big topic, protecting our data and intellectual property. And we're going to have some examples of that. And then there's misuse. How are people using AI against us with email phishing scams? And then bias is a big topic as well, because at the end of the day, AI is using data, uh, and it's using data to learn. So there's, as we have bias, human biases, AI has the same ones. So we're going to look at that as well. And adoption, and then third party. And third party is interesting because as AI grows, we're all going to have different vendors and different tools that are going to come into the marketplace, and there are going to be a lot of vendors and other people who are going to be coming and pitching their products to you. So the question is, how do you vet whether the vendor is actually keeping your data safe? So let's start with accuracy and hallucination. So AI, at the end of the day, generative AI is math and statistics. So it's not really using human judgment to see what's accurate and what's not. So for example, this is a scenario where I put in a prompt saying, tell me information on recent environmental achievements. So if I'm an environmental researcher and I'm using AI, I can put something like this and it gives me a perfectly good response. So I don't know if you have access to the chat, but maybe if someone wants to take a shot at like, do you think this information is completely, all of it is accurate, maybe some of it, maybe none of it? I'll give people a second to read it and maybe give the responses. Let me see if I have access to chat. Right. So let me, this is what we call mixed accuracy, right? So if you look at the bottom of my table, there is the response looks perfectly normal, and the first 3 points are true, right? The UN did launch a global campaign. It was very successful, but the last is untrue, like somebody said in the chat. As of when this prompt was done, there wasn't a concept of eco tree, right? So this detail was completely fabricated. So if you have, I can imagine my daughter who is in, seventh grade, maybe trying to use AI to do some research, and, maybe she's not paying enough attention to really verify whether this concept of eco tree exists. And you can take this example and put it in your own world, whether you're developing, research paper or researching for a grant and using AI as a research tool. uh, you have to be careful, because this is a more dangerous kind of fabrication, because it is embedded within some information that is actually accurate. So, and we're going to talk about ways to mitigate it in a bit, but the idea is we can't take what the tool gives us just at face value. Intellectual property. So this is interesting. We have to be very careful with this. It's also lots of gray areas. I'm not a lawyer, but in speaking to different lawyers, I've gathered a lot of information. But this is one of those where if you are creating original content, you want to be able to have a legal resource. But essentially, the big idea is that who owns the content that's created by AI? So if you ask AI to create a toy with octopus-like features, and you actually use that design to make the toy or manufacture the toy, your organization may not actually own it, because we don't know where the design came from. Maybe it came from someone else's creation, right? Or it's AI's original creation. So anything that is created with AI is not guaranteed to be exclusive to one company, right? So if you're creating text for a fundraising campaign, right, it's not necessarily owned by you if you're just copying and pasting it. The text has to reflect your own voice, your own organization. So really the mitigation here is that you have to significantly modify it to make it your own, or make it seem like human created. So, and I'm sure the copyright laws here are still evolving, but the way they stand today, you can't, anything that's AI generated and it's not modified by you in a significant way, you can't necessarily claim exclusive rights to that. So this is the part where we're going to talk about human in the loop, but we have to be very careful on how we're using the output from AI. A lot of people mention privacy, so this is a big topic. So your data can be used to train these AI models, right? So there are tools that intentionally exclude it, like if you're using Microsoft Copilot, if you read the privacy agreements, they would exclude your data from used in AI training, in training their models. But with ChatGPT, that's not really the case unless you go into the settings and actually tell ChatGPT not to use your data. And generally, when people think data, they think, Excel sheets or numbers. Data actually includes prompts. It includes your ideas. So if you had an original idea that you put into ChatGPT, that's used as well. So data is actually very broad. It's not just uploading Excel sheets or employee names, right? So, and how the data is used is really dependent on the tool's terms and conditions. So tool meaning it could be ChatGPT, it could be your AI note takers, or if you're using Grammarly, a lot of that depends on how they use it. It has to be, the privacy terms have to be read to really determine, and we're going to look at that in a bit. So at the end of the day, you're responsible for making sure you're not putting in anything that's private, and data that has been given to you by a third party. So if you've received data from, let's say, the Westchester County government, or you've bought data somewhere, again, that's your responsibility to make sure that you're not putting in that data in the AI tool. If it's public, it's fine. But if there's any kind of privacy in there, you're responsible for the privacy of the third-party data that you might be getting from any other vendor or partner. So here's a quick table of what not to put. So hopefully this is pretty straightforward for everyone, but any kind of name, address, personally identified information, social security numbers, health records. If you have patents, trade secrets, or even plans that your organization is creating for maybe launching a new kind of campaign, new kind of product, new kind of program that's confidential. We don't want to put that in, right? There are ways to anonymize it, but the general guideline is anything confidential. We don't want to put in there passwords. If you're in the education space, then student information, and obviously anything legal. So there have been many cases in the last couple of years since these tools came out, embarrassing stories of people putting in data and then making it into the front page of New York Times because they weren't careful. So we want to make sure you don't become that next story, and that's really the idea. So there is more data points, but these are the most common mistakes people make when they just put data into these tools. The third type is bias, and the different types of bias. Obviously, this is not new to any one of us, and then an AI, unfortunately, has the same biases, and there is no magic bullet to protect us against this, right? So, for example, gender bias, and I'm going to show you some examples of this in a second. But it reinforces stereotypes. For cultural bias, the data that's in AI and it was developed, there is a heavy Western influence. So unless you explicitly instruct AI to be more neutral, it is going to favor certain cultures more than others. So let's get into a quick example. So I gave this prompt, write me a short story about a hardworking nurse, make it 100 words. So it came right back and it assumed that the nurse was a woman, right? So it said Maria was a nurse, so it gave me a story, but it just assumed Maria. And then I gave it another prompt, tell me 100 story about hardworking engineer. It came back with Ethan, right? So again, assumed that hardworking engineer is a male, which obviously is not true. So this is obviously a very simplified example uh, of bias, but the point being that if you translate this into your world and your role, we have to be very careful, especially if you're using AI for any kind of public-facing marketing outreach, that we are looking out for these things and these kind of biases. The third example is really bias in systems. So like I said, like we're going to have more and more tools out there other than ChatGPT and Copilot. There are going to be many vendors. So each vendor or each tool that's being used, again, is using data, which is the data in itself has a lot of bias in it. So for example, if you now or in the future using any kind of HR systems or HR platforms that now have AI in them, and you're using them for interviewing or screening candidates or hiring, we have to be very careful because we don't know if the system is screening candidates based on resumes, whether there's bias built into that, right? So it could be screening out certain people based on certain criteria or stereotypes. And if someone does file a complaint against an organization, the standard laws apply. There's no special law for or exclusion just because we use AI. And on the right side, you see, this article is a little dated. It's 2018, but the idea is the same. Amazon has started using a AI-based tool for hiring, and then they found out they discriminated against women. So as we are starting to incorporate more of this into our lives, whether it be personal lives or professional, there is no foolproof of way to protect. There's no automated system to take bias out. There's a lot of work being done on AI to improve it, but till then, till we have a solution. We just have to use our judgment. Misuse. So there are, external parties that are using them against us. So I think we all receive those scam phishing emails. It's very common, but just with AI, it's becoming very, very easy for anyone to write a phishing email. So I literally wrote this prompt, obviously as an example, and it gave me an email. It's fake. It gave me links as well, which are malicious, or I could make them malicious. And I could literally take this and I could send out a scam email to thousands of people. So, and I use like very basic AI tools, but the hackers, they have very, very sophisticated AI tools specifically meant for these phishing campaigns. So we have to be very careful because it's getting so sophisticated that sometimes they seem too realistic. And this is an example of how, the dark side of AI, so to speak, where it's being used against us. Shadow AI. So really this concept is about, in our organizations, because everyone is curious, they've started using ChatGPT or Copilot. People are opening their own ChatGPT accounts and sometimes under their personal Gmail accounts. And, without essentially the permission of, the organization, because the organization may not really have a policy on AI. So now the organization has lost control over the data, right? Because you have now 6 employees, they've opened different AI accounts, they're putting in organization data, and we don't know where that data is going, right? It could be going in different tools. And that becomes very dangerous because we lose track of how it's being used, where the data is going. And, some people, they start paying for these tools. So suddenly now you have multiple subscriptions and your costs go up. So this is what we call a shadow AI, where the organization doesn't have an AI policy or hasn't organized for AI, but they are employees taking it upon themselves to use these tools. The last one I'm going to talk about is third-party vendor risk. So I know we are all using AI note takers. I use them too. And we're using Grammarly or other AI tools. More and more tools have AI built into them. And the question really becomes is, who owns that data? How is that being kept private? And what rights do we have as users of these tools to that data? So again, this is a serious consideration now because we're all using ChatGPT or Copilot, but as you start using more and more different tools, this becomes even more of a consideration. So I'm going to quickly talk about mitigation, and I might switch screens to actually show you a couple of these privacy clauses. But the core concept I want to bring forward is really just organizing for AI with human in the loop. So human in the loop isn't really a new concept, right? The human in the loop the concept has been there forever since AI came out many, many decades ago. But this idea is even more important now because this powerful tool is in our hands. So the short answer to human in the loop is that having someone constantly verifying the output or fact checking and making sure that what we're putting into AI isn't violating our privacy and security, but what's coming out is being vetted as well. And I'm going to talk through a couple of ways to do that, but we cannot 100% rely on AI, right? There has to be the human element, at least till we get better tools and systems to detect these things. That needs to be in place as part of the process. And one concept that I've been talking about is really creating an AI pod with internal and external partners within the organization. So it's really, it's a team of people. So whether you're a team of two or whether you're a team of 50, but having a couple of internal people be the leadership or be people who are really passionate about these tools, being part of that AI pod or AI team that has certain responsibilities or processes in place to make sure everyone is using it responsibly. And AI is changing so fast that it's very it'd be very beneficial to have part of that team is external partners like your technology providers or your lawyers or any kind of AI training people to really complete that team. So what would that team look like and what would that team do? This team would be responsible for really organizing AI within the organization. So creating those AI guidelines, uh, organizing AI usage within the organization. So making sure people are trained on what to do, what not to do, how to use AI, making sure like if people are using the output from AI, that there is someone who's checking and verifying and fact checking, or training people to see how to fact check, and then really just keeping up to date with all the AI changes, which is a lot, and that's why I these external partners are important to be on the team as well. So the most common pushback I get on this concept is, I have like 3 people and we're so already starved for resources. How am I supposed to create an AI team? And my answer is like, we don't really have to go hire new people to this, but if we just start in a small way, even just having that level of awareness and starting to create those guidelines, I think that's a good place to start. So talking about guidelines, so here's some sample guidelines to put in an AI guidelines document. So having the ethical use of AI, data privacy, transparency clauses. And honestly, you can even go into ChatGPT and create like an AI policy as a starter and then modify it to your organization and what would make sense for you. So this is not hard to do. This necessarily doesn't take hours and hours of work. And the important thing with this is it needs to be, it's not a one and done. So it needs to be looked at, at some frequency to make sure that it's updated. And the second thing is like people are trained on this. So having a policy and keeping it on your desk is not enough. So making sure people are actually aware of what the guardrails are for using AI within the organization. So privacy, I know this was a big one for everyone. So I often get this question, what do I put in there? What do I not? Which I showed you that table in the beginning. But generally speaking, public information is okay if it's available publicly. Any private confidential, is not okay. So this is, there are definitely some gray areas. People have different opinions, but I'm pretty black and white with this. But again, you have to use the tools and read the privacy policies and understand the data usage policy. So everyone is using, or most people are using AI note takers. So when it comes to AI note takers, do not, for example, enable it in conversation with lawyers because apparently it can be used in lawsuits, the information. Or if you're having sensitive discussions around employees and employee performance or evaluations, do not bring the AI note taker into those internal discussions. So for example, I use it when I'm talking to, in my sales meetings or even with clients. But when I know this information or this particular topic is sensitive, I don't allow the AI note taker. And if you are using one, for example, I use Fathom and, I went into their privacy policy. And, a lot of these good vendors and good tools, they make it very clear how they're using the data. So, it says we do not use your content to train, customize, or improve our AI models, right? So you can definitely, before you use the tool, you can go in and just read what the policy is and then make a decision whether you feel comfortable or not. I'm going to show you another example of the same tool, but how they're using data a little differently. Again, keeping with the privacy theme, there are plagiarism checkers. They're not 100% foolproof, but if you're using, for example, Grammarly, Grammarly has an inbuilt plagiarism checker where you can make sure that if you're using the tool to generate content, it's not plagiarized. So you'll see more and more tools, have these inbuilt checkers. But the point is, like, they're not 100% foolproof, but at least there's something that's a little bit more automated. Number 4 is third-party vendor due diligence. So if you do decide to use a different tool from a different vendor, maybe you're implementing a new CRM system or donor management system that uses AI, um, or you're already using something and they suddenly announce that, oh, now we have Gen AI in the tool. You want to right away ask them some of these questions. How are you using the data, right? How is the data protected? Who owns the data? Because with Gen AI, some of those data ownership policy might change now. And how often do you notify us when your policy changes, right? Do they share data with third parties? So a lot of these vendors, they work with other third parties. So, what is their policy on sharing this data with other third parties? And, we talked about bias. So one good question to ask is, what steps have you taken to mitigate bias? And what measures do you have to protect the data? So this list is not comprehensive. There's many more questions, but this is a good start. Uh, because if you are using a system and if they do announce that now they have Gen AI capability in it, this is the first thing I would recommend. So for example, again, I got this from my note taker. They very explicitly state, right, who owns the content. So it says, the copyrights laws apply. The user content, it belongs to your company. You retain any copyright and proprietary rights. But if you scroll down a little bit, they say, how do we disclose information? Vendors and service providers, we may disclose this information we receive with vendors and other service providers. So the point being is, like, while they may not be using your data uh, for for purpose of improving their products or their marketing, but they could be sharing that data with their partners. And this is not uncommon, but I think it's good to be aware of this and make sure that if you're going to be using a tool like this, that you're comfortable. And knowing this, now next time you're using an AI note take or any other tool, now we know that, okay, if it could be potentially shared, we're not going to bring an AI note taker into a board meeting that we might be discussing very sensitive topics, right? Or we're not going to bring an AI note taker into an internal meeting where we're talking about, employee issues. But this shouldn't deter you from using these tools. Regarding malicious activities, so I talked about phishing scams. Really, there are two main risk mitigation. One is the security awareness training for employees, so making sure that employees always have top of mind uh, how to spot phishing scams, so that the human element tends to be the weakest link in the chain. So making sure that employees are always trained on how to spot these scams. And then there are many, on the good side, there are many AI-based preventative tools, that block phishing emails as well. So we want to consider those because it's so easy to create those phishing emails, but there are tools that exist that help block those as well. So here's like a quick checklist. I'm going to wrap it up. I'm not sure how I was doing on time, but I think what can be done now, regardless of wherever you are in your AI journey, is, it's having those guidelines. Even if you are two people in the organization using AI, just having understanding of what are the acceptable uses, and I go back to, these kind of topics we want to have in those guidelines, and making sure they're in place. And then just to prevent shadow AI, having an inventory of AI tools that are already being used. So having a conversation with everyone on the team, making sure like people are not using the Gmail version of ChatGPT, and really creating a simple Excel sheet of here are tools, and here's what, maybe we don't want to allow, and here's what, maybe we're okay with. And then, constantly training everyone on not just how to use AI, but also, what to do, what not to do, the privacy and the things I just mentioned. And then as our adoption of AI grows and more and more people are using it within the organization, we are interacting with third-party vendors to use their tools. We want to start thinking about some of these other things, like more advanced guidelines, maybe having a few more people and creating more structure around this AI. And then, what I didn't mention previously was having a proactive communication strategy. So if you do end up using AI and putting content out there, and somebody comes and says, you're not allowed to use this content, I actually own the rights. Or if one of our stakeholders asks us about, if AI was used, we just want to have a way or a framework to how we communicate, our use of AI. So that goes back to having guidelines on disclosure and transparency. So I think we have a few minutes. I might just pull up a window and show you. So this is Grammarly. I don't know if you've used it or not, but this is a very popular tool for authoring content. And like I'd shown you in my screenshot, they have a plagiarism checker. I think you may have to be on the pro version to use this. And even in ChatGPT, if you're on the more advanced version, and if you go into settings and data controls, you can turn off them using your data for training their models. But that said, that doesn't mean the data isn't stored on their servers or the infrastructure. They still have the data, they're just not using it. So just because you turn that off doesn't mean that you can go ahead and put all your private information in there. You still don't want to put it. And if you're using Copilot, again, the same idea. They have terms and conditions where they say we don't use the data to train the models, but that doesn't mean that they don't have the data. So I'm going to pause here. I'm happy to go back to any of these sections if people have questions. I haven't monitored the chat. I don't know if somebody has questions there, but Amy or Suzanne, maybe we want to open it up to questions from the audience.
I could read this one. If someone is using the free version of ChatGPT and uses for edit support, may have put the name of your organization or another org in doing research, how do you go back to settings to perhaps delete that question? Did I hear you say something like this about how you could tell the settings what to do and what not to do?
Yeah, you can't really go back, but what you can do is if you're, I actually have the paid version. I don't think I've ever used the free version, but you can, if you have a account with ChatGPT, then you can go into settings and and you can look for under data controls, and you can turn this setting off. So going forward, anything you put in there, it's not going to use the data to train their models. If you're using the completely free version, which is, I think, now they allow you to do it even without creating an account, that is just, you can't do any data control there. Like that's just free public version, whatever you've put in there, you've put in there. It's part of the model. And I think they're pretty clear about that. It's only if you have an account or more of the premium version, you can go in and have a little bit more control on it. But if you've already done it, to my knowledge, there isn't a way to go back and delete it. I think if you're really concerned if it was really private, you could email OpenAI and ask them to delete it. I'm not sure what their so I know that in the European Union, because they're governed by GDPR, they're a little bit more careful there, and they have to comply with any data deletion requests. But I'm not 100% sure what the compliance policy is in the US for if you wanted to go delete the data, but it doesn't hurt to try.
There's another question about, does using AI at your business affect your cybersecurity insurance, or do we need an addendum on the cybersecurity insurance?
Yeah, no, that's a very good question. So I haven't heard so far of insurance being affected by the use of AI like ChatGPT. But that's something, I can definitely bring back to some of my insurance resources. But I haven't heard of the insurance angle being affected yet. But that said, in general, with cybersecurity, you don't want to put, I think I had on my slides, you don't want to put any of information about your systems or logs of your systems or passwords in there, because if there's a breach because of that, and if it's traced back to that, the insurance company may well come back and, that might affect how they reimburse. But I am not aware of any kind of like official incidents or policies like that. But I wouldn't, but if there's an incident that's traced back to the use of AI, I would not, put it outside the realm of possibility that that could become a big consideration.
I don't see any other questions in the chat. Does anyone have anything else to ask Nikhil? You can unmute or type it in the chat at this point. We have a few minutes left. One. Nikhil, do you have any other questions for participants?
No, I mean, I would summarize and say that, we shouldn't, this is not to deter you from using AI. I think it's here to stay. I think we should use it for the benefits. Not using it is riskier than using it. But I think I go back to my seatbelt analogy. We drive our cars responsibly. We don't drink and drive. So the same idea with generative AI is, just use human judgment as you're using it, and keep some of these things in mind.
So everyone's saying thank you in the chat, Nikhil. That was great. There were some questions about other resources from our previous events on this topic, and I will be sending out those recordings to everyone here today. So you will have those resources. And yes, I think, Nikhil, people want to know if they can reach out to you.
Yeah, sure. I think, Suzanne, you have my email.
Mhm.
I will put it in the chat as well. But Suzanne or Amy can definitely put you in touch with me or any other resources.
Great.
Happy to answer any questions that come up later.
There's Nikhil's, in the chat. Well, Nikhil, this was excellent as always. Thank you so much, and thank everyone for being here. And I guess the leaving thought is to, use AI, use it cautiously with your seatbelt on. Is
Yeah.
that the analogy we should keep on our heads? Okay.
Yep, definitely.
All right, thank you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care.
Bye.
Thanks for being here.